What you're about to hear defies all logic. A 7-year-old girl survived 3 days alone in one of America's most dangerous forests. Search teams found nothing. Dogs lost her scent. Drones saw only endless trees. Yet she walked out unharmed, claiming someone in white showed her the way home. This is her story. Before we continue, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I really want to see how far these powerful stories are reaching across the world. The morning sun barely pierced through the kitchen window when Maria Rodriguez finished braiding her daughter's long black hair. 7-year-old Sophia hummed softly while eating her cereal, swinging her legs that didn't quite reach the floor. It was supposed to be a perfect Saturday in Pine Valley, Colorado, the kind of October day when the aspens turn gold and the air smelled like pine needles and possibility. Maria's sister Elena had driven up from Denver with her 3 kids for a family camping trip in Roosevelt National Forest, something they'd been planning for months. "Mommy, can I bring Mr. Patches?" Sophia asked, clutching her worn teddy bear. Maria smiled and nodded, unaware that this simple decision would later become crucial. They loaded up 2 cars with tents, sleeping bags, and enough food for the weekend. Sophia rode with her cousins, pressed against the window, watching the city disappear into wilderness. The campsite sat deep in the forest, 15 miles from the nearest paved road, surrounded by towering pines and granite cliffs that seemed to touch the clouds. By noon, they'd set up camp near a small creek that bubbled over smooth stones. The children played while the adults prepared lunch. Sophia's cousin Miguel, who was 12, suggested they explore a nearby trail he'd spotted. "Just for a few minutes," he promised his mother. Elena looked at Maria, who hesitated before agreeing. "Stay together and don't go far," she warned. 5 children headed down the path, their laughter echoing through the trees. Sophia struggled to keep up with the older kids, her short legs working hard over roots and rocks. Miguel found a stick and pretended it was a sword, leading them deeper into the woods. They discovered a fallen log that formed a natural bridge over a ravine. One by one, the older children crossed. Sophia stood at the edge, frightened. "Come on, baby," Miguel called. "Don't be scared." She took one tentative step, then another. Halfway across, her foot slipped on moss. She didn't fall, but the scare made her freeze. By the time Miguel came back to help her, the other children had continued ahead, assuming they were following. Sophia and Miguel crossed together, but when they reached the other side, the trail split in 3 directions. Miguel chose left, certain that's where his siblings went. They walked for 10 minutes before realizing they were alone. "They must have gone back," Miguel said, trying to hide his worry. They turned around, but nothing looked familiar. Every tree seemed identical. Every rock formation a twin of another. Miguel pulled out his phone. No signal. The battery icon showed 15%. Panic crept into his voice as he called out for the others. Only birds answered. They tried retracing their steps, but the forest had swallowed their path. An hour passed. 2 hours. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows that transformed the forest into a maze of darkness and light. Miguel's phone died. He was crying now, though he tried to hide it from Sophia. "We need to get back," he kept saying, pulling her in different directions, each attempt leading nowhere. That's when they heard it, a voice calling Miguel's name. He screamed back, relief flooding his face. "Stay here," he told Sophia, setting her on a large rock. "I'll run ahead and get help. Don't move, okay? Promise me." Sophia nodded, clutching Mr. Patches. Miguel sprinted toward the voice, disappearing through the trees. She waited. The forest grew quieter. The voices faded. Minutes felt like hours. The rock was cold. She called out for Miguel, for her mother, for anyone. Nobody came. The sun sank lower, painting the sky orange to the canopy. Fear wrapped around her like a cold blanket. She climbed off the rock, convinced she heard her mother calling. She walked toward the sound, but it was just wind through leaves. Now she was truly lost. Back at camp, chaos erupted when Miguel stumbled out of the forest alone, hysterical and barely coherent. "Sophia," he gasped. "I left her on a rock. I thought I heard Dad. I ran. She's gone." Maria's scream could shatter glass. Within minutes, they called 911. Search and rescue teams mobilized. By nightfall, 50 volunteers combed the forest with flashlights and thermal cameras. Dogs tracked her scent to a rock formation but lost it there, as if she'd vanished into thin air. Maria refused to leave the forest edge, calling Sophia's name until her voice went hoarse. The temperature dropped to near freezing. Somewhere in that vast darkness, a 7-year-old girl was alone. Sophia had never known such darkness. The forest at night wasn't just absence of light. It was a living thing that pressed against her from all sides. She found shelter beneath a cluster of pine trees whose branches touched the ground, creating a small cave. She crawled inside, pulling pine needles around her like a blanket. Mr. Patches was pressed against her chest. She was crying so hard she couldn't breathe properly. Every sound terrified her. Branches cracking, animals moving, wind that sounded like whispers. She prayed the way her grandmother had taught her, words tumbling out between sobs. Please, God. Please, Mary. I'm scared. I want my mommy. The cold seeped through her jacket. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. But worse than physical discomfort was a terrible aloneness, the feeling that the world had forgotten she existed. That's when she saw it. A soft, white light moving between the trees. Not harsh like a flashlight, but gentle like moonlight through clouds. She thought it was rescuers and started to crawl out, but the light moved away. She followed it, stumbling through undergrowth. The light stayed just ahead, never too far, never too close. It led her to a small cave in a hillside, sheltered and dry. Inside, incredibly, was an old blanket left by some previous hiker. She wrapped herself in it, and though it smelled like mildew, it was warm. The light faded, but she felt less alone. She fell asleep whispering, "Thank you," over and over. Dawn brought new terror. The search intensified. Helicopters thundered overhead, but the forest canopy was too thick. Sophia heard them and screamed, waving the blanket, but they passed over. She was so thirsty her tongue felt like sandpaper. She remembered her father teaching her about morning dew and licked it off leaves, barely enough to wet her mouth. Hunger made her dizzy. She tried eating grass, but it made her gag. By afternoon of the second day, she could barely walk. That's when she found the blackberries. A whole bush of them, hidden in a sunny clearing. She ate until her fingers were stained purple and her stomach hurt. Nearby, a tiny stream trickled over rocks. She drank deeply, not caring about the warnings she'd heard about untreated water. Night fell again. The temperature dropped further. She found another cluster of trees and built a nest of pine needles, the way she'd seen birds do. She was delirious now, talking to Mr. Patches, as if he could answer. "We're going to be okay," she told him. "Someone's helping us." Because she'd felt it all day, a presence just beyond her vision, guiding her away from steep drops and dangerous areas. When she'd almost stepped on a rattlesnake sunning itself on a rock, something made her freeze and walk around. When she considered eating red berries that looked appetizing, a voice in her head said no. She didn't question it. Children don't need logic to believe in miracles. The third morning arrived gray and cold. Fog rolled through the forest like ghost ships. Sophia could barely stand. Her legs were covered in scratches. Her hair was matted with pine sap. She lost one shoe in mud and walked with a limp. The search area had expanded to 20 square miles. Maria hadn't slept in 60 hours. She made a shrine at the forest edge with Sophia's favorite things, candles burning despite the wind. The police gently suggested she prepare for the worst. Statistics were grim. 3 nights in wilderness. Temperatures near freezing. A 7-year-old child. But Maria refused to listen. "My daughter is alive," she insisted. "God wouldn't take her. Our Lady wouldn't let it happen." Sophia, meanwhile, had reached a kind of peace born from exhaustion. She walked without thinking, following something she couldn't see but could feel. The white light appeared more frequently now, always when she was about to give up. It led her along a deer trail she never would have found alone. It guided her around a mother bear with cubs. It showed her which mushrooms the deer were eating, though she'd never seen them before. On the afternoon of the third day, She reached a ridge. Below, through the trees, she saw something that made her cry. A road. An actual paved road with yellow lines. She tried to run but fell, rolling down the hillside, pine needles in her mouth, rocks tearing her jacket. She reached the road and collapsed in the middle of it. That's when she saw her clearly for the first time. A woman in white, standing at the road's edge. Not ghostly or transparent, but solid and real, with kind brown eyes and hands that seemed to glow. She didn't speak with words, but Sophia understood. Wait here. They're coming. Sophia wanted to ask who she was, but she already knew. The same presence her grandmother prayed to every morning. The same figure in the pendant her mother wore. The woman smiled and walked into the forest, disappearing like morning mist. 5 minutes later, a park ranger's truck rounded the corner. He slammed on his brakes, unable to believe his eyes. There in the middle of Route 34, 15 miles from where she'd disappeared, sat Sofia Rodriguez, alive, conscious, clutching a teddy bear. He radiated and immediately, his voice breaking. I found her. Dear God, I found her. She's alive. The rescue helicopter landed in a nearby clearing. Sophia was wrapped in thermal blankets, given water and glucose. She kept saying the lady in white, but medics assumed she was delirious. The flight to the hospital took 12 minutes. Maria was already there, having been notified the moment the ranger called in. When Sophia was wheeled in, Maria collapsed to her knees, sobbing so hard security thought she was having a medical emergency. The medical examination revealed the impossible. Despite 3 days in wilderness, Sophia had no hypothermia, no severe dehydration, no infections from the dozens of cuts and scratches. Her vital signs were stable. She'd lost 4 pounds but was otherwise healthy. Doctors couldn't explain it. The path she'd traveled, based on where she was found, covered nearly 20 miles of the most treacherous terrain in Roosevelt National Forest. Experienced hikers with proper equipment struggled on those trails. A 7-year-old in a light jacket and one shoe shouldn't have survived the first night. The story exploded across media. Skeptics said she found shelter, maybe an abandoned cabin, but Forest Service confirmed no structures existed in that area. Some claimed she'd been helped by a hiker who didn't want publicity, but Sophia's description never wavered. A lady in white, glowing hands, no footprints where she walked. Maria knew the truth. She'd prayed to Our Lady of Guadalupe since childhood. Her own mother had stories of miraculous interventions. This was their miracle, delivered when science said it was impossible. Miguel never forgave himself for leaving Sophia, despite everyone telling him it wasn't his fault. He was just a scared child too. But Sophia held no anger. You had to leave, she told him weeks later. Otherwise, how would the lady have found me? That perspective, that complete absence of blame from such a young child, broke him completely. He cried in her small arms while she patted his head. The family changed after that. They attended Mass together. They prayed before meals, not from fear or obligation, but from gratitude. Because whether you believe in divine intervention or lucky coincidence, the fact remained that a 7-year-old girl walked out a forest that had swallowed experienced hikers whole. The search and rescue team conducted a review, trying to understand how they'd missed her. The commander, a 20-year veteran named James Wright, admitted something that never made it into official reports. We should have found her body within 6 hours, he said privately. The search grid was perfect. The dogs had her scent. Every statistical model said she couldn't have traveled that far. It's like she was somewhere else for 3 days, then placed on that road. He'd seen many forest rescues, most ending in tragedy. This one defied every protocol and prediction in his manual. Sophia returned to school a month later. Her classmates treated her like a celebrity. Everyone wanted to hear the story, but she found it hard to explain. How do you describe a feeling of being guided? How do you convince people that hunger and cold seemed distant when the light appeared? Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, suggested she draw what she saw. Sophia spent hours with crayons, creating image after image of the lady in white. Always the same. Brown eyes, gentle smile, hands that glowed like holding starlight. The drawings were pinned to refrigerators and church bulletin boards across Pine Valley. A year later, a documentary crew interviewed the family. They brought maps and survival experts, trying to trace Sophia's path. The conclusion was always the same: impossible. A child that age, in those conditions, through that terrain, simply could not have survived alone. The crew interviewed Sophia, now 8 and more articulate. "Were you scared?" they asked. "Yes," she answered simply. "But I wasn't alone." When pressed for details about the lady, she said something that made Maria cry. She looked like the painting in Grandma's house, the one she kisses every morning. They showed her hundreds of religious images. She pointed to one immediately: Our Lady of Guadalupe. The Forest Service installed new emergency boxes along the trails, filled with blankets and water. They named the initiative Sophia's Trail, though she'd never follow an actual trail. Hikers reported finding them helpful, some claiming they'd been guided to them when lost. The boxes bore a simple message: you are not alone. Whether that meant human help was coming or something more divine was left to interpretation. Maria didn't care about skeptics or proof. She had her daughter back. Every morning, she stood at Sophia's door, watching her sleep, Mr. Patches still clutched in her arms. The same teddy bear that Ranger said probably saved her life, providing psychological comfort that prevented complete panic. The truth, as Sophia understood it with a child's clarity, was simple. She was lost. She prayed. Someone answered, not with thunder or angels, but with gentle light and whispered directions, with berries when she was hungry, with water when she was thirsty, with shelter when she was cold, with a presence that said without words, "Keep walking. Your mother is waiting." Some called it luck. Some called it survival instinct. Sophia called it love, the kind that transcends explanation and exists in the space between heartbeats, in the moment between loss and found. 5 years have passed now. Sophia is 12, the same age Miguel was when it happened. She volunteers with Forest Rescue, the youngest member they've ever had. She doesn't search for lost hikers. Instead, she sits with families waiting for news, holding their hands, telling them about hope, about the morning her mother's prayers were answered, about the lady in white who some see and some don't, but who walks between the trees, guiding lost children home. She never promises miracles, but she tells them what she knows to be true. Sometimes, when everything seems impossible, when science says no and statistics say never, when the darkness is so complete you can't see your own hands, that's when the light appears. Small at first, easy to miss, but if you follow it, if you trust it, it will lead you home. The forest remains dangerous. Children still get lost. Not all stories end like Sophia's. But in Pine Valley and spreading beyond, there's a different kind of faith now. Not the kind that expects intervention, but the kind that recognizes it when it comes. In the hospital rooms where Sophia visits sick children. In the community center where Maria teaches other mothers to pray. In the church where Miguel, now 17, serves as an altar boy, still seeking forgiveness he's already received. They all carry the same truth Sophia learned in those 3 days. We are never as alone as we think we are. The story you just witnessed reminds us that miracles still happen. If this touched your heart, the next video appearing on your screen shares another incredible testimony of faith. Click now to continue this journey of hope.